broadcaster Iain Dale and former Labour Home Secretary Jacqui Smith. I mean, two extraordinary royal media moments. One, this Apple series, 5-part series, which Prince Harry is a significant part of, along with Oprah, talking about mental health, in which he talks about the death of his mother, the impact on him, and the way she was chased into the tunnel and how it was affected her. And then that happens just a few hours. We get to see that a few hours after Prince William and Prince Harry both give statements. But Prince William talks so specifically about the documentary, the wrong way he believes Diana, his mum, was induced into making it, and the impact that had on her mental health and on their family and on Britain. It is absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? And it feels like a terrible morning for the BBC and a worrying morning, actually, for all professionals in the media, because it casts a shadow over everything, doesn't it?
It does, Kate, yeah. Big question there. I mean, first of all, on William's comments, there is real anger and hurt in his eyes when he's making that statement. And you can understand that, really, because as Prince Harry also very eloquently demonstrates, if you lose your mother at the age at which they did, that is going to impact you for the whole of the rest of your life. If you then believe that for the last years of her life, she didn't receive the protection that she needed or the support around her because somebody had lied to her and essentially caused her to become even more estranged from their father and from the protection that the royal family could have given, you will feel immense hurt and anger about that. And I think that's what Prince William was very ably demonstrating in the comments.
And he's not got to draw a line under it here, is he?
Absolutely not. No. But the other point I think that you make is that is an appalling breakdown of the sorts of standards that you would expect to see from an organisation like the BBC, or in fact from any organisation engaged in journalism. But I don't think that is a brush with which all journalists should be tarred. You know, I've been on the receiving end of some harsh behaviour by journalists, but on the whole, I think in this country we have high journalistic standards. And the reason why this is so shocking is because it's such an enormous breach of them.
Yeah, and Oliver Dowden, the Culture Secretary, is saying that there needs to be, and the Tory government have been strong on this anyway, they're sort of not huge fans of the BBC in general, one gets the sense, but in this occasion, Oliver Dowden is saying there needs to be an overhaul and a relook at how the board works and whether there ought to be perhaps journalists involved at the highest levels of running the BBC so that then you don't look the other way.
Well, there always have been journalists involved at the highest levels of the BBC. Tony Hall, Lord Hall, was head of news before he became Director General. And I think that when you look at what happened yesterday, he seems to be one of the main people that need to explain possibly a little bit more than he already has. He has apologised, but I think maybe a little bit more from him might be in order.
What are the implications for the BBC, do you think?
Well,
is it an isolated moment that was 25 years ago and can be apologised for?
The problem is no one can prove one way or the other, because if you are anti-BBC, if you don't like BBC journalism, this feeds what you already think.
Yes, and you can see that on some of the responses we've had this year. We've never trusted them, we've never liked them.
I mean, a couple of friends of mine who, shall we say, are rather more anti-BBC than I am, I mean, they just say, oh, just abolish the whole thing, or take... I'm not paying my licence fee for this sort of thing. And you can kind of understand that. But to pretend that all BBC journalists behave in the way that Martin Bashir did...
I was a BBC journalist for 12 years before I came
exactly. And most BBC journalists I know, I just don't think would have ever entertained this. Now,
That's the problem,
what it has to do...
Because the government, and people that don't want the BBC to exist, will now use this as a very, very public platform with a royal stamp of approval to take the BBC to task.
I think the BBC deserves to be taken to task,
on this
frankly,
issue,
on this. But I don't think you can translate this into everything else. That's the problem. It will be page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of the Daily Mail for the next 5 days. But it's quite difficult to see how the BBC takes firm action to reassure people about what happens now.
Yeah. Let's talk about failures of the test and trace system, which obviously we talked about this time last year, probably. But it is very pertinent right now because it's emerged that this new Indian COVID-19 variant, that the surge of it over a sort of period of 3 weeks was perhaps fuelled by the fact that the test and trace system was almost non-existent at that point, that local authorities had no idea who was coming in and out of, particularly Blackburn with Darwin. I mean, how much? £37 billion, I think, has been spent on this test and tracing for specifically moments like this, and it fails just at the point when you need it the most.
Well, particularly when I think Blackburn and Bolton are the two areas that are most hit by this. And you think, well, Blackburn in particular has been really good at test and trace locally, done by the Public Health Department, which I've never understood why that hasn't been rolled out all over the country. I remember back in, May last year, interviewing the leader of Blackburn Council, who was explaining what they were doing. And I said to him, well, why aren't other people copying you? And I still don't know the answer to that question. So it is scandalous. I've no idea how these things happen, how you can actually not have anything for 3 weeks.
And especially as we have Sage saying that this Indian variant might mean a third wave.
Yeah.
And we didn't know the numbers because of this failure.
Exactly. This is a serious failure. And I just sort of note again that NHS Test and Trace, as Iain rightly points out, was set up separately from the infrastructure that already exists in local government to test and to trace. And it hasn't succeeded in the way in which it should do. The vaccination programme, which has been enormously successful, has used the infrastructure and the people who are already in the NHS. And that's why it's been so successful. And that's our hope against the expansion of the Indian variant, which the good news is doesn't seem to be transmitting perhaps quite as quickly as some people feared it would.
But it says here that there's been an increase of 160% in the last week. There are now 3,500 cases.
That's all over the country.
Oh, all over the country, yeah. But that's the problem, isn't it? We always remember that things start off small and then before you know it, it's spread. And of course, we are having, there is a great success in these live events, all these test live events. The good news is that there was only 15 COVID positive cases out of 58,000 people who were packed in, no social distancing. I mean, it's an incredible. We saw, the Liverpool
and that
wave,
brings optimism.
And that brings optimism.
And remember,
at that same point.
And the comfort that we should have is that the vaccine is there and it is working. And I would appeal again to anybody who's been offered the vaccine that hasn't had it. Just think about it. It is working. The dangers that people thought about at the beginning, they have not been proved to be true. And just get vaccinated because that will protect everybody.
Well, talking of vaccines, there's an extraordinary suggestion, isn't it, that on dating apps like Tinder, people should have a blue tick on their profile to show they've been double vaccinated.
I think it's actually a brilliant idea, I'm not going to lie.
Well,
good idea.
In that case...
I'm double vaccinated. What do they call it? Double jab. DJ. I'm DJ. I'm DJ Kate if you've been double jabbed.
Well, as of Wednesday, I'm DJ. So I'm not on any dating apps at the moment.
But you get a blue tick if you were.
She used to be.
But I think it's interesting because there's this random video in China as well, not random, but they're sort of doing this whole dance to sort of try and encourage people to get jabbed and all that. But I think
they're serious members. I think we could have a look at it. They're serious, proper officials doing it. We were wondering what it would look like if Boris and Matt Hancock tried to do some kind of...
You imagine?
You're an expert on dancing, Jacqui. What?
Well, Rampant's more of an expert.
No.
Well, I'm not. I mean, perhaps get Theresa May back to do some of her
Yes,
moves.
very good.
We can have a little listen to it. Well, I mean, I'm encouraged. The thing is that I do, as the vaccines are now opening up to 34 and 35-year-olds, and then it'll get low. Do you think there is a sense that younger people will just be won't keep their appointments? I mean, there is a sense, isn't there, that perhaps younger people... I'm not so sure about that,
I don't think so. I think that everyone gets the importance of it. Yeah. And there will always be people at the margins who rebel against authority for whatever reason. And, OK, younger people generally, to stereotype, often do that a little bit more than older people. But I think that overwhelming majority will get vaccinated.
And generally, we have had a very good take-up of the vaccine in this country, which is really important. Because to come back to what you were saying previously, I've been talking to staff at the NHS Trust that I chair this week. They are very, you know, they have done a brilliant job over the last year, but they are really worried about the idea that they might be back into the even a part of what they've had to experience over the last year. So if you think the NHS has done a great job over the last year, you owe it to them to get a vaccination.
Yeah.
Yes.